Hey everybody, it is Professor Parrish and we are on week 6 of English 122. So I said last week that I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about paper 4's guidelines because it is our research paper for the class. You do have basically 3 weeks nearly to write this paper. So I want to go ahead and talk about this in the video and mainly spend most of the time going over the guidelines, but we'll talk about the other assignments this week as well. The only assignment I'm not going to go over is the drama exam. It's pretty much straightforward like our poetry and short story exams were. It's just going to be a series of questions, some matching, some short answer, some multiple choice maybe, but it's not going to be anything that's outside the norm of what we normally do for the class. So yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about this assignment and kind of review it. So with your module, there's basically 2 sections I would like you guys to look at. One is writing about literature from pages 1761 to 1782 and writing about a research paper from pages 1841 to 1860. Those 2 sections, they are a little bit lengthier than the readings we've had so far in the class, but I think that they're pretty much going to be the more comprehensive readings to talk about this, especially if you're a little nervous about a research paper. So the main things this week are the discussion forum, the drama exam, the reading response, and the outline for paper 4. So let's go ahead and talk about the paper thesis and outline. So definitely I'm going to be going over the guidelines here shortly. The outline and thesis just needs for you to tell me what option you're picking and a skeletal framework of your points for the paper. And it can be pretty basic. I just want to know, what are you writing about? What ideas do you have? And again, these are not set in stone. They're just to give me an idea of what you're going to be writing about. Okay? So let's go ahead and talk about the guidelines then with that. With the guidelines, this is a big paper. It's worth 200 points. It's a lot, but you got 3 weeks to write it. And so I'm going to kind of go over some options students have done in the past and then talk about those and kind of how you can format and organize this paper. So step 1 is deciding what genre of literature you want to focus on. Do you want to do something related to short story? Did you like the poetry section? Did you like the drama section? Which of those 3 did you kind of like best? And so once you figure that out, step 2 is deciding what you want to focus on with the genre. So here's some ideas that students have done in the past that have been very successful. You are not limited to these, but they are just some options. So the probably the most done option has been a research analysis of an author's fiction, a poet's poetry, or a playwright's screenplay history and how their style and craft has developed over time. So it's not really a biography, but you are researching a specific author and kind of talking about their whole catalog that they've done. So I've had some students do Stephen King, I've had some students do Nicholas Sparks, I've had students do Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost. I've had students like pick an author they really liked, and then even like playwrights such as, you know, you could have something like, oh gosh, now that you could have David Lynch as a screenwriter, talk about him. You can basically pick any author and talk about their catalog of writing. Now, what I don't want it to be is I don't want it to be a biography where you talk about like where they grew up and all this. I want to know about the works that they've done. I mean, you can have a little paragraph at the beginning that talks about some background, but I want the paper to focus on their writing and how it's changed, the terminology that applies to it, things like that. But I've seen some really good papers come out of this, so that option is pretty popular. I really like the second option, a controversy. So for example, one of my favorite papers in this class was from years ago where Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, there was a big scandal in the news where she had created a sequel, to Kill a Mockingbird, but she never published it. And then several publishers kind of cornered her in her elderly age and convinced her to publish it for the money. And I had a student write about that whole controversy, like what it did, how the story was not good, and they made a whole paper about it, and it was very interesting. I've had students write, should Rocky Horror be remade or something like that. If you see anything about banned books in the news, you can talk about it. I mean, as long as it's something to do with literature, you can talk about a controversy within it. But I've had some students pick some really crazy, unique topics from this and did really well with them. So that could be an option. You could even do an extended research analysis like what we've been doing in the class so far. So is there a piece of drama or fiction that's maybe been adapted into another genre that you want to talk about? I think my favorite is when Batman versus Superman came out. I had a student write a really cool paper talking about how the movie was very different from the comics. And so when it was adapted, they talked about what was left out, what was changed, the audience reception of it, why they did certain things that they did, kind of the production side of it. It was a very layered paper, and that's kind of the thing about this paper. You want it to have layers. You want it to have lots of points, lots of things you can talk about that will help you fill space so you won't feel like you're just adding fluff. It has to have a lot of content. And then you can also do an extended analysis of a specific poem, fiction, or play. The only thing is it cannot be the subject of a previous paper. So if you wrote about Edgar Allan Poe in papers 1 through 3, you can't write about him for the research paper. But if you wrote about, you want to do a thing about George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, go for it. Write a whole analysis of it. You could probably get more than 8 pages, considering the story's like thousands of pages long. So yeah. Also, I am all up for out-of-the-box ideas for this project. So if you really like creative writing and you think you might want to do like an 8-page creative writing, like short story or a play, 1-act play or something like that, you can use that as your topic, and we can talk about it in the assignment, like the little comment box on the assignment. We can talk about it along with your options. Or you can email me if you have questions about the creative writing component, right? But I'm going to talk about that down below. So, step 3, no matter what topic you pick, your paper has to be 8 pages long, double-spaced, 12-point font. And Arial font ain't gonna cut it, y'all. I've had to get on to several people for using Arial. It's too big. Do Times New Roman, do Georgia, do something along the same size as that. Because if I think your paper is too big of a font, I'm gonna highlight the whole thing, change it to Times New Roman, and if it's not 8 pages, we're gonna have problems. So just double check that. But yes, it has to be 8 pages. That is not counting the works cited page. So I know what you're thinking. A lot of students freak out at this. It's okay. I've taught this class for 10 years, and every semester everybody makes it. So I can tell you that you can, right? Even teaching this in the summer, I know you can do this. You've got 3 weeks. You will be able to do it. So here's how I would recommend breaking it up to make it not feel so stressful. And your outline is going to be crucial with this paper, because your outline is going to give you a framework and help you go from point to point, and it's going to tie everything together. Because one thing that can happen when you have a long paper is you can get lost. So I want you to have that outline as a guide to keep you on track. So I would say you definitely need a detailed introduction where you explain your thesis, the goal of your paper, as well as the points. You also need a section afterwards where you explain what the controversy is, if that was your choice, explain the process of adapting the book, if that was your topic, or offer the background information on your author before you dive into everything else. Your paper should cover at least 3 terms or concepts from the chapters that apply to the genre you pick. So if you pick poetry, your paper needs to address at least 3 poetry terms in relation to whatever you're talking about. Same with short stories, same with drama. If you're choosing the creative writing option, then I'm going to see that you've utilized at least 3 of those concepts in your actual creative writing. But if you're doing any type of analysis, I need to be able to find those 3 terms that you've talked about in your paper. You will need to have at least 4 sources. Your textbook can be 1, so that's 1 source. You need to have 3 others. I will not count any Wikipedias, wikis, or about sites as credible sources, because they are not. So if you use like Wikipedia or WikiHow or something, anything that has the word wiki in it, I'm going to be like, nope, and check it off. So, I mean, your sources can be news sources, they can be pop culture sources, they can be interviews, they can be videos from YouTube, they can be anything, emails, interviews, whatever. They just need to be 4 sources, and your textbook can be included. So there with that. You can even include, if you use an outside source, like if you do write a paper about Game of Thrones, you can use Game of Thrones as a source. I'm fine with that. Your paper should be an analysis, meaning it includes your thoughts, a synthesis of your words and sources. It's not a summary. It's not a book report. Book reports are my least favorite genre, because all they are people telling me what the plot of the story is. And if I want to know that, I'll go read the story. So I have to be a little bit bitter about that, because I've had several students write, like when the Hunger Games was at the height of its popularity, I've only read the first Hunger Games book because I have no reason to read the second or third, because every student that wrote about the Hunger Games that semester wrote a book report and told me what the plot was. And I was like, well, now you've spared me from reading that story. So it should be an analysis. It should be your thoughts, your opinions, using the terminology to get your point across. But it should not just tell me what happens from the start to finish of the novel. That's not going to work. And again, if you're doing an out-of-the-box project, you can talk to me about what we can do with that analysis. And now, MLA, you need to have a works cited page, in-text citation. Some people up through the second paper, I haven't graded the third paper yet, but some of y'all still aren't doing this. There's going to be a lot of points taken off if you don't have it. So just beware. That will really impact your grade if you don't have these. And we have an entire presentation about it on our homepage to help you. And if you have questions, you can always email to ask. And we'll be talking about it next week. If you're doing an outside of the box project, like if you're doing a creative writing project, you will still need to find 4 sources and cite them on a works cited page to show me you can do it. And then below that, you'll need to give me a sentence from your paper and put an in-text citation at the end of it as an example to show me you can create an in-text citation. And if you have questions about this, I can tell you in the comments how that's going to work. But your paper and topic outline is due this weekend. Next week, we are going to do a peer review. So I'll talk about that in the week 7 discussion forum, just like a peer review of what you got. So I would this weekend get started on your paper, and next week make it a goal by next week, by next Friday, which would be the 24th, make it a goal to have half your paper done. 4 pages. Make it a goal. Try to get as much as you can done, but make it a goal and do it bit by bit. This paper is not a last minute, I woke up on Sunday, it was due, or in this case, Thursday, the 28th when it's due, and decided to write it. You will fail if you do that. And I've had students try to do it and they've been like, oh, why did I wait till the last minute to write it? So that's why we're doing the peer review. That's why we're doing the thesis and outline. That's why you're getting an extra week to work on this, because you will need it. And you can do it. Like I said, I've taught this class 10 years. Students do it every semester. Every time I teach it, they do it fine. So I know you can, but this is not the paper to procrastinate on. And it's 200 points. So it is a chunk of your class. As far as how those points are broken down, the works cited and in-text citations are 40 of those 200 points. The content and analysis is 60 points. Spelling and grammar, page length and formatting, and the intro and conclusion. So it balances out pretty well, right? But just be wary and work on this paper a little bit at a time. That's the best suggestion I can have. If you have main points, just work on it point by point. Get a draft out there, review it. Miss Lane is a great resource. Have her peer review your paper as well as the discussion forum we're going to do. It will be fine. And as always, email me with questions. When you do the thesis and outline, if you have concerns or questions, feel free to ask them at the bottom of your thesis and outline assignment this week. Like when you go to the bottom of your assignment, say, hey, Miss Parrish, I got some questions. And then I will be very happy to answer your questions in the comments when I get back to you with feedback on the assignment. Okay? So this is my favorite paper of the class. I love reading these papers. I love seeing what you all come up with. I'm really excited to see what you all come up with. So I hope that you all come up with some really cool ideas, because I'm really excited about it. So you may be asking yourself, well, what kind of paper would this look like? And so for our discussion forum this week, I found a video essay that is essentially the second option of our paper in video form. So this is Lindsay Ellis. I really like her work. She does a lot of just reviews of movies and plays. She's a theater major that went to NYU, and she does a lot of video essays critiquing various things. And so she talks about this thing called revisionist history. Her thesis of her paper is about revisionist history, and you'll learn about it in the video. But she applies it specifically to Mary Poppins. Yeah, hello, my dog barking. She applies it to Mary Poppins and talks about it in this video. And essentially you can look at this video being organized like a version of paper 4. So as you're watching it, just imagine you're reading a paper and you can see the structure and how she frames it and how she talks about things within the paper. So in the discussion forum, I'm going to ask, what is revisionist history? How does she apply this term? Are there any benefits to it? And you can give me your opinion. And then could this essentially be a version of paper 4? Spoilers, yes. And what could you take away from it as we move into our last paper? So that's the discussion forum. And then the reading response that we're doing, one of the last ones we're going to do for the class, is asking, since we're rounding out theater from last week, talking about modern theater, and then for having you compare and contrast to modern theater plays. Kind of like what you did last week. All right? So yeah, I know it's a lot of writing, but if you guys go ahead and look ahead, there's only one more reading response, the MLA exam, and the peer review next week. So there's only 3 assignments next week instead of the usual 4 or 5, because I know I want to give you time to work on everything as we head towards finals week. So as always, if you have any questions, please email me and let me know, and I'd be happy to answer them. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon to talk to you all about week 7 of English 122.